be your occupational therapist today. We're going to do a screening test before we get started on our range of motion. So if you can do what I do, that would be great. So we're going to bend our head down, and then back up. And we're going to go side to side, and then the other side. And then we're going to bring our arms up, and we're going to touch the back of our head, and then you're going to touch the small of your back, and then you're going to bring your arms down. Arms are going to come back out to the side, and you're going to touch your shoulders. You're going to bring your arms back down. You're going to bend at the elbow. Bring your palms up, palms down. Flex your wrists down, flex your wrists up. Make a fist. Extend your fingers and touch your thumb to each of your fingertips. Thank you. For shoulder flexion, the subject is seated with the humerus in neutral position. The axis of the goniometer is centered of the humerus just distal to the acromion process on the lateral aspect of the humerus. The stationary bar and the movable bar are parallel to the trunk. The client's arm is raised in front of her body in a sagittal plane of movement. The measurement begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 170 degrees. For shoulder extension, the subject is seated with no obstruction behind the humerus, and the humerus is in a neutral position. The position of the goniometer is the same as it was for shoulder flexion. The client's arm is brought to the back of the body in a sagittal plane of movement. The measurement begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 60 degrees. For shoulder abduction, the subject is seated with the humerus in adduction and external rotation. The axis of the goniometer is on the acromion process of the posterior surface of the shoulder. The stationary bar is parallel to the trunk, and the movable bar is parallel to the humerus. The client's arm is raised to the side of the body in a frontal plane of movement. The measurement begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 170 degrees. Shoulder horizontal adduction, the subject is seated with the shoulder abducted to 90 degrees, the elbow extended with the palm facing down. The axis of the goniometer is over the acromion process. The stationary bar is parallel over the shoulder towards the neck, and the movable bar is parallel to the humerus on the superior aspect. The client's arm is moved toward the back of the body in the horizontal plane of movement. Measurement begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 40 degrees. For shoulder horizontal adduction, the subject and the goniometer are the same as they were for shoulder horizontal abduction. The client's arm is moved in front of the body in the horizontal plane of movement. The measurement begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 130 degrees. Shoulder internal rotation, the subject is seated with the humerus abducted to 90 degrees and the elbow flexed to 90 degrees. The axis of the goniometer is on the olecranon process of the elbow, and the stationary bar is perpendicular to the forearm. The movable bar is parallel to the forearm. The client's forearm is swung down gently, keeping the humerus parallel to the floor. The range of motion begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 70 degrees. Shoulder external rotation, the subject is seated with the humerus abducted to 90 degrees and the elbow flexed to 90 degrees and the forearm in mid-position perpendicular to the body. The axis of the goniometer is on the olecranon process of the elbow, and the stationary bar is perpendicular to the forearm. The movable bar is parallel to the forearm. The client's forearm is swung up gently to keep the humerus parallel to the floor. The measurement begins at 0 degrees and ranges to 90 degrees. For elbow flexion, the start position is sitting in a chair with arm at the side. The position of the forearm determines which muscle is working primarily. The patient should bring the arm to 90 degrees. When the forearm is in supination, the biceps brachii is muscle working. When the forearm is in pronation, it is the brachialis. When the forearm is in mid position, it is the brachioradialis. Bend your elbow and try to touch your shoulder. Good. I'm going to apply some resistance. Hold your arm there and don't let me move it. Good. Bend your elbow and try to touch your shoulder. Good. I'm going to apply some resistance. Hold your arm there and don't let me move it. Good. Bend your elbow and try to touch your shoulder. I'm going to put some resistance on. Hold your arm there and don't let me move it. Good. Start position for elbow extension is in prone with the humerus abducted to 90 degrees and supported on the table. The elbow is flexed and the forearm is hanging over the edge of the table. To stabilize, you support the arm under the anterior surface of the distal humerus and then give the instructions. Can you straighten your arm for me, please? Good. Hold your arm there and don't let me push it back down. I'm going to apply some resistance. Good. The start position for forearm pronation is sitting with the humerus adducted, elbow flexed to 90 degrees, and the forearm supinated. The wrist and fingers are relaxed. To stabilize the humerus to keep it adducted to the body, you then give the instructions to turn your palm to the floor, and don't let me turn it back over. You apply resistance by encircling the patient's wrist and the therapist extending their finger along the forearm. The therapist applies resistance in the direction of supination. Can you turn your palm down towards the ground for me, please? Good. I'm going to apply some resistance. Don't let me turn it back over. Good. The start position for forearm supination, the patient is seated with the trunk stabilized. The elbow is tucked into the side. There is 90 degrees of elbow flexion and the palm is facing the floor. The therapist says keep your elbow tucked to your side and turn your palm to face the ceiling. If the full range of motion is achieved, the therapist says hold this position and don't let me move you. The therapist then applies resistance. Can you turn your palm up towards the ceiling for me, please? Good. Hold your palm there. I'm going to apply some resistance. Don't let me turn it over. Please note that all of the participants in this video fall within normal levels for range of motion and manual muscle testing. In a clinic setting, it will be important to know the gravity-eliminated positions for manual muscle testing and to be able to eliminate the gravity plane for range of motion.